Welcome to Against the Tide, the podcast where extraordinary changemakers share their stories and their wisdom. Against the Tide is a celebration of courageous women who defy expectation to create lasting impact by daring to forge their own paths. We'll dive deep into powerful themes such as the complexity of identity and how it influences the choices we make, embracing change even when it feels uncomfortable, and how breaking free from labels can unlock your true potential. Join me, Jo Metcalf, to hear stories of incredible women who, by swimming against the tide, prove that extraordinary things can happen. I'm delighted to welcome Holly Dannhauser to the podcast. Holly is a strategist, facilitator and professional coach. Known for her work in money mindset mentoring, she is passionate about helping others break free from limitations to build rich, fulfilling lives. As the owner of Moon & Mountain, Holly brings a wealth of experience from health and statutory sector to help shine a light on what matters to her clients. In this conversation, Holly shares her journey, the principles that drive her, and the importance of financial confidence for personal and professional growth. Whether you're looking to elevate your career, improve your money mindset, or find inspiration to pursue your ambitions, Holly's story will resonate. This conversation will help you swim against the tide of financial fear. Welcome, Holly, and thank you so much for joining us today. We met through sort of mutual connection, and I'm really excited to see where this conversation goes today. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Thank you. We'll jump straight in with, tell me a bit about your early years.
Oh, big question to start straight away. So my early years, I am a Southerner by birth and a Yorkshire girl by choice. But I grew up in the sort of home counties, northwest of London, and very happy younger years to start with. I was in a loving home. I lived on the same street as my maternal grandparents, which was absolutely fantastic. And I suppose the other thing to mention is that my paternal grandparents were of German Jewish origin and unfortunately had to flee their family home in the 1930s due to persecution. So I do think that awareness of that really shaped me and my upbringing, I suppose, and being very aware that they had to relocate, settle. They didn't come to this country until the 1960s. So their freedom and independence was quite hard fought, really. But yeah, my younger years were very happy up until the age of about sort of 10, I suppose. And it became quite clear that my parents were not in a very happy relationship. And by the time I was 12, my parents decided to separate and my father left the family home, and our relationship became very distant until I was about 17, where we ceased contact entirely. So yeah, that was kind of a deep
I was going to say straight
in there. I'm an open book, straight in there.
Yeah. And what impacted all of that, haven't you?
For me, the main impact was to become a very independent person from quite a young age. I was very determined to forge my own path and to not be too demanding on those around me. And I think the impact of certainly of my own dad leaving the family unit, and he stopped contributing to that family unit at all, it made me very determined to I suppose be that independent, self-resilient, rely upon myself, because I sort of learned that I couldn't necessarily rely on other people around me in the ways that I thought I would be able to. And I suppose it also led me into a path of wanting to shore up my friendships and really make sure that I had the resources both internally and externally that I needed in order to kind of keep a feeling of safety and connection.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell me about your early career and working in the healthcare system?
Yes, so I got a graduate scheme placement in Sheffield City Council when I first left university, which was really fortunate. I was ever so lucky because it was just at the time where financially in this country things were going a little bit awry. It was 2009. And when I was offered that graduate placement in the council, they said, would you like to focus on policing, poverty or health? And it was an option presented to me at the very end of an interview process, and it was like one more thing.
Just add it in.
And it was a real sliding doors moment because I picked health, and that was then my career for the next 15 years almost. It was quite a transformational question, really. And so I picked health and was very fortunate enough to be offered that role, and found myself thrown into the deep end, which I loved, with all sorts of public health projects. There was things very strategically based in the city. I was working with the Health and Wellbeing Board, which is the collection of very senior leaders around health and care organisations that come together to make collective decisions. All sorts of partnership projects from, like I say, very strategic roles right through to community-based initiatives. I was saying yes to everything. I was getting stuck in all sorts of bits of work. And as that 3 months was coming to an end, I was desperate not to leave. I really wanted to stay. And very fortunately, I was encouraged and supported to stay in a role that was carefully crafted, I would say, at that time. And it was the very first joint appointment between public health, the NHS and adult social care. So it wasn't the most firm working arrangement from an HR perspective, but it was a bit of a workaround, which meant that everyone could throw in a little bit of cash to keep me. And also it meant that there was something that was trying to integrate across health and social care for the first time, which was quite pioneering for that time, really, in terms of what it was trying to do. And I absolutely loved it. But unfortunately, because of the workaround situation, after 3 years in that role, HR found me out. And when austerity was hitting really hard in local authorities, people on unusual contracts were the first people to be asked to leave. And unfortunately, that is what happened to me. So I then had to very quickly find another role elsewhere. I ended up going into the private sector for a very short period of time in a marketing role. And then shortly after that, I returned and worked at NHS England, so came back into the health and care space, and then went to a charity, which I loved, doing a capital fundraising programme there for a new community centre, and then got a role in Leeds City Council, but working as an independent member of the team, so working across all of the health and care partners as an organisationally neutral member of Team Leeds.
What made you move from local authority into being self-employed?
Yeah, thank you. It was a brilliant career. It was a wonderful role. And as I said before, I was working with some fantastic people. There are some really passionate, talented folks working within the health and care system, particularly within Leeds, I must say. What became apparent to me towards the end of my time in that role was that I was seeking progression, I was seeking growth, and I was seeking the support to do that. But it didn't seem as though there was anywhere for me to go. And I was looking to other people to help me get there. And when I realised that I was also trying quite hard to make change happen, whether that be within the team I was in or the system as a whole, as we've talked about before, I realised that I wasn't looking at how and where I could change myself. And that opportunity really presented itself to me as a way of going self-employed, work on myself, work on my own terms, and really make that progression for myself rather than waiting for somebody else to tell me that I was ready for it or tell me that I was worthy of it. I think that's been a pattern throughout my career, that I've looked for that external sign that I'm ready for the next step, or that someone else deems me worthy of that next step. And as hard as it was, and I was in a place of quite low confidence actually when I left that role, I think that was ultimately absolutely necessary for me to reconnect with my own inner value, and for me to look within to create the conditions that help me to thrive, rather than hoping and waiting for that to come about in an employed role.
If we jump back again in terms of your early years, and you were talking about that sense of independence, just talk me a little bit more about that sort of independence side and what was the driver there.
Okay, so there's a few things, I suppose. If I think about my very formative early years, I mentioned that I lived very close to my grandparents on my mum's side. Very, very hardworking people. Again, ran their own business. My grandfather was a baker, and they owned 4 local bakeries near where I grew up. Lived on the same street as us, as I said, and I saw them put an awful lot of passion and pride into their work. But I also saw my grandma work really hard. You know, she was an integral driving force behind that business, and I just saw a strong woman doing her thing, earning a crust, no pun intended.
Literally.
Yeah. But also being a hugely loving, big-hearted woman who had plenty of time for me and my brother and her other grandchildren. So she was a huge influence on me, actually, I think. And so that really inspired me to want to be like her, I think, and to be a part of something that was really helpful, really making a difference, but also part of a community as well. Then when the family dynamic was sort of starting to shift, I also saw my mum put herself back through education. I'm so proud of her. She's someone who has quite a complex relationship with education growing up, and was sort of moved around schools, moved from pillar to post, and that really affected her educational outcomes, although she's an incredibly bright, intelligent woman. And I saw her adapt herself and go back into that space, which had been quite challenging for her. And I think that takes an awful lot of courage. And she was following her passion. She retrained in early years education. And by the time I left my primary school, she was quite senior in the nursery that was attached to that primary school. So I saw her really thrive and make that change for herself. And again, that taught me something and showed me what that could look like. So then when the family unit changed and my dad stepped away from that, I thought, oh, well, hang on. I see all these people doing their own thing and making the best of complex situations. I see people following their passions. I see women put themselves in positions of leadership. And I also feel a sense of not being able to rely on one parent anymore. And I don't want to then leave all that reliance on the parent that's left. So, or that's remaining, I should say. I didn't want to sort of leave all that to my mum. So I thought, well, actually, now's the time for me to show that resilience and independence. So I got my first job aged 13, and I started running a guitar teaching business when I was 14. So yeah, I was doing that 2 or 3 nights a week by the time I was sort of 14, 15. And then by the time I was 16, got my first Saturday job on a more regular basis. So independence to me was being able to do my own thing, follow what I was interested in. There was an element of being able to keep up with my friends and to say yes, and to not be the one that had to always say no and miss out. And there was also the financial side of things. I wanted to earn my own money so that I didn't have to ask for things or be told no because the family finances weren't going to allow that.
Leads us nicely into the next question, actually. How has your understanding of yourself and your relationship with money influenced your work?
Hugely, but I didn't realise it until I went self-employed. So I think when I look back over my career history, I can only realise now that I was always seeking either the next thing where I would, I was sort of searching for, well, how could I maybe do a bit more, or could I take on more work? And this is not just about money, but this is about wanting to develop myself. But I've also noticed a bit of a pattern where I would wait for somebody else to tell me what my value was. So I would say to somebody, for instance, oh, there's that job vacancies coming up. Do you think that I'm good enough for it? Do you think that's right for me? or I would be in a role for a while and someone else would approach me and say, why aren't you considering going for that role? But it was only once I decided to go self-employed that my relationship with money expressed itself with full force. I realised what was really going on, and that ultimately I was giving away my power. I was not valuing myself whatsoever. I thought that making money had to be really, really hard, and I also had a very tight grip on money because of all of my experiences growing up. So just a short anecdote. When I first went self-employed, I'd sent out an email to all of my network across my health and care contacts saying that I was resigning. And someone within my network contacted me and said, "Oh, if you're going self-employed and you're going to be doing your own thing, we might have some work for you." And instead of getting excited about what the opportunity was, I'm not even sure I asked. I was already fearing the moment where we would have to have the conversation about money. And of course, that moment came. That moment came, and I was wanting the ground to swallow me whole. I'd already asked my accountant to figure out what the number should be that I would say for my day rate. I quickly capitulated on that number straight away when they offered me something else. And I just felt really grateful that anyone was offering me anything at all. And I remember leaving that meeting, sitting in my car and thinking, I cannot build a business with that type of conversation and that type of emotion going through my body every time I speak to a potential client. And I then had to think about, where has all that come from? Why do I feel that way? And ultimately, I was being ruled by quite a lot of shame around money, but a real disconnect between what I was offering and what value and worth I was feeling around myself. And my relationship with money, as I say, just came into the forefront of my focus. And that was when I really started to do the work on my money dynamic.
Can you tell us about your money dynamic and yes, your journey through learning in that space?
Yes, I can. So as I say, I realised very quickly that I had an incredibly tight grip on money, that my money stakes were quite high. I suppose also bearing in mind I'd worked in the public sector for years and years and years, where everyone's pay grades are transparent, everyone knows what everyone else is earning. If a job comes available, everyone's like, oh, it's band this or it's pay grade that. And also the person that I was sitting in front of talking about this potential job opportunity knew what I'd been paid for years. And I feel like that was just a repeating narrative for me, that someone else tells me what I am worth. So when I set up my own business and all of this comes into sharp focus, I realised I didn't actually really know what my worth was. And I was just still finding other people to tell me that. And that was quite confronting, actually, that I didn't really feel like I was valuing me. And, I went deep. I went deep into all of the books, training courses. I read everything I could. I started doing the internal work on my money mindset about my own worth and how that was going to either enable or disable my ability to earn. And ultimately, I was now responsible for running my own business and creating my own income, paying the bills. I couldn't afford, in every sense of the word, to carry on as I was. What struck me as I started doing that work was how powerful it was quite quickly, actually. It was incredibly rapid, where I understood the problem. I started really delving into where that had come from, how it was showing up, what I wanted it to be instead, and where it was already holding me back. And I found that so powerful and so transformational that I stopped reading the books. I stopped doing the sort of reaching for the external stuff and started looking for, how do I train in this so that I can help other people? I really got a sense of, this cannot just be me. And I also got a strong sense of, I'm pretty sure this affects more women than it does more men. So yeah, it was quite the journey, but it led me to train as an accredited money mindset mentor And now I coach other, mainly women, to improve their own relationship with money, which is really about understanding the connection between worth and the potential for you to have wealth. And I mean wealth in all senses of the word: wealth of time, freedom, choice, income. What is your version of a rich life? That's what I'm really passionate about helping people to connect with.
Yeah, really powerful. And why do you think it's more women than men?
There's a number of reasons, but we only have to look to our fairly recent history to see that up until, as I say, up until quite recently, women's connection with money has been funneled through their relationship with either their father or their husband. So women haven't had the same opportunities to be independent with their money as our male friends have for a long, long time. Historically, there have been an awful lot of limitations to the way in which women interact with money, the ownership that they have of their financial dynamic. And ultimately, that has meant that women have been out of their own power with money for an awfully long time. Thankfully, that is changing. But again, legislation changes and it still takes an awfully long time for the reality to change. You only have to look at gender equality in pay. The legislation changed quite a long time ago, but the reality still hasn't caught up.
Yeah, really fascinating, isn't it? So what lessons have you learned through your training and approaches to money mindset, particularly regarding women in that?
The first lesson I have learned is that it is entirely possible to change how you think, feel, and behave with money. If you are someone that is feeling stuck in a financial situation or stuck with certain thoughts or stuck with a story that you are telling yourself about who you are with money, how you are with money, or what money is in your life, you do not have to accept that story any longer. So another lesson that I've learned through my training, but also just from life and speaking to people, is that women are far more likely to feel shame or embarrassment around money, far more so than men. There's quite a lot of statistics to back that up as well. Certainly Starling Bank have done a really interesting report around that shows those findings. And as a consequence, like I said before, just talking about money, having an open, honest, really unemotional sometimes conversation around money is one of the most powerful starting points. But having said that, I will caveat all of that with the people that tell you that money is just a tool, something that we swap for X or Y, is lying. Money is emotional, and certainly for women more so than men. Money is something that we attach meaning to, so it's always going to be emotional, but non-judgmental. We don't have to judge the emotions that we have around money. They are the things that give us insight and knowledge about our relationship with money. And once we see them, acknowledge them, and appreciate them for what they are and where they've come from, we can do something about them. And then talking about money is a really powerful way to start shifting that narrative that you're holding. Something that is a really practical place to start. So something that if you're listening to this and thinking, oh, I feel quite seen by this conversation, I get it. I've been there. Now I'm more than happy to talk about money with anybody that will listen. But if you are listening to this and feeling some of those, what I describe as sticky, tricky or icky feelings around money, something that might help you is to, rather than shy away from those, really listen in and maybe write them down if that feels helpful to start exploring what patterns or concepts might be coming up. You know, is there a story this is telling you? What kind of language are you using about money? Are you judging money quite harshly? Are you judging yourself with money harshly? So I hear a lot of people say, oh, I'm terrible with money. Oh, it just it comes in and it goes out. I'm rubbish at it. Oh, I can't save. Now, when I hear things like that, that to me is a sign of the story that's being told. It's not a sign of who you are. And that's the bit that can change. So something really practical. Start acknowledging or being aware of the language that you're using about yourself with money, about money in its own right. Start making a bit of a note of some of those bits of language, spot the patterns, and then start to think, where did some of this come from? Is there a story here that I'm telling myself? And where did that story originate? And this is the real crucial bit. Ask yourself, is that my story? Because often it isn't. It's a story that we're living that has been handed to us by our parents or grandparents or school, or a situation that we found ourselves in growing up, or something we've learned as we've gone through life. If it does feel like your story and you feel quite attached to it and it's not serving you, that's when I would encourage you to go back to my earlier point about it is entirely possible for it to change.
Brilliant. Just the mindset shift is like fascinating, isn't it? Of the stories that we tell ourselves in our mind and how that sort of plays out. Really, really interesting. What role do you believe changing people's relationships with money can play in driving change in the world?
So I've spent an awful lot of years developing strategies, coaching individuals, working with large organisations, small teams, big systems, and all the strategy in the world, all the planning, all the processes don't necessarily address the worth question. So without the confidence, the self-belief, and the inherent understanding of your own value, that strategy can fall flat. And that's the bit that I've seen happen time and time again in my work, in my career, and in my own personal life. You know, I had this grand hope to go out and start my own business and, I might do this, I could do that, and all these ideas. I wouldn't have been able to have done any of them unless I'd addressed my relationship with money. I would have stayed small, I would have played everything down, I would have undervalued my work, I would have over-delivered, overworked, and probably just led to a place of low self-confidence and burnout, I think. So the role of helping people improve their relationship with money, which starts with that understanding of what is your inherent money archetype, what are your strengths, what are your preferences. If we start there, that's when we can help people really shift into their zone of preference, of genius, of enjoyment. I mean, goodness, isn't life supposed to be fun and uplifting and fulfilling? And we, depending on your beliefs, you only get one go at this. And at the very least, this is the go that we're in right now. So why not make it the absolute best it can be? And ultimately, if you feel your own value and go out there and own that value, as I say, the more that benefits you, the more fulfilled, the more fun, the more enjoyment, the more freedom, the more choice. You know, whatever your version of a rich life is, you absolutely deserve to live it. And that's the value of working with your relationship with money.
Yeah. If people don't feel motivated by that, then I don't know what. But you talked about the archetypes in there. Is there anything else you want to say to give our listeners a feel of what that looks like, what that feels like? Any more examples?
Yes, so there are 8 different archetypes. I have an assessment process. So there's 75 questions. It's quite long, but quite quick because it's supposed to be instinctive, answering those questions quite quickly. And when you find out your archetypes, it's like you have just put the final piece of the puzzle in its place. Because up until that point, as I say, you might have all the strategy, you might have all the ambition, you might have all the big ideas, you might even have all the success, but it can feel quite hard work, or it can feel like something's missing, or it can feel just like something is a bit out of alignment. So when you find out what your archetypes are, and you will be a mix of all 8. We are all a mix of all 8. But your top archetypes, and I work with the top 3 archetypes from your assessment, they are the driving force of your decision making, of your preferences, of your innate strengths and gifts and talents with money. But they're also where you have your greatest, I've mentioned shadow side before, whether you want to call it challenge, opportunity for growth. They are where you have the chance to look at what really works for you and maybe what is less natural for you around money. Now, when you have that information, you can stretch more into your strengths and gifts around money. The more in alignment you'll feel, the easier your decision making will feel. It will affect how you show up in your business or in your career. It might affect how you are in relationships, what roles you take on in life, business or work. If you're promoting yourself, whether that's through the services you offer or the products you sell, or even your leadership role or career role, it will affect how you do that. How do you talk about yourself? It reaches into every aspect of your life, because every single decision that you make in life, work, career, family, everything is filtered through the lens of your archetypes.
Fascinating. So if people are inspired to learn more, how do they get involved, understand, do the test?
Yes. So you can access all of this on my website. This is moon-mountain.com. And if you want to take the assessment, just put /quiz on the end of that URL, and you'll be able to take my free personality quiz and find out your money archetype.
Who has supported you and helped you get to where you've got to and where you are now?
Okay, so the first person, this might all sound a bit like cliched, but I have to really, really acknowledge my husband. He's my best pal. We've known each other for years and years, went to the same university, met in first year, didn't get together until about 5 years later, much to no one's surprise apart from us. But he's my biggest cheerleader, and anything that I bring to him, whether that's a crazy idea or an inner fear or something that I haven't voiced to anybody yet, it's all received with so much warmth and support and kindness. He is one of life's good eggs. He really is. And he just has so much belief in me, and that sometimes when you see that in someone else reflected back at you, it can sometimes just be the little encouragement that you didn't know you needed until you see it. So he has definitely really supported me. What's interesting is, so with the money mindset work, I'm trained to use an archetype model. So there's 8 different money personalities. And Mike, that's my husband, he and I are the exact same money archetypes.
Interesting.
So on the one hand, super helpful because he totally gets it. When I'm in one of my shadow sides of my archetypes, he can really see that, acknowledge it, and go, actually, I'm just gonna show you what's going on here, and I totally get it and need that to help me move to a better, more supportive place. Other times we can both be in it together. So just as an example, we are both what's called the accumulator archetype. So someone who really values money, very into the financial details, but has that tight grip on it. Like I said before, is very financially independent, but gets quite a there's a bit of an emotional kick that happens when you see money in the bank, because to me, that money in the bank means independence. It means safety. It means my safety. And that to me is clearly, from my upbringing, very important to me. But sometimes our tight grip accumulators that can be quite frugal, I have to say, Mike and I can be in that space together. And sometimes that means we make choices that deny ourselves a little bit of joy in the moment because we think, oh, well, we can put that away for a rainy day. So that's quite interesting, just as an aside note. Other people that have really supported me on my journey, obviously I've mentioned my mum and seeing her do her thing in later life, retraining, finding a new career path that really feels much more aligned to her passions. I think, in fact, I know that is what led me to make choices that were for me, not what other people expected or thought I should be doing. So someone else I want to mention who is Dawn O'Keefe. She's the co-founder and MD of Shine, which is a social enterprise based in Hare Hills in Leeds. And she is the epitome, again, of what a role model female in business can look like. She is a fierce cheerleader for the people around her, and I think she's fabulous.
Brilliant. That leads us very nicely onto the next question as well. I understand you view women as badasses, which I love. How does that give you hope for the future?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so yes, I do. I really do. I think, there's a lot of badasses in the world. I think there's an awful lot of badass women, some of which know it, an awful lot of them don't. And I think the more that we can encourage people to see their own greatness, the better for everybody. And I suppose that's why I'm so passionate about helping people connect to their worth and therefore their inevitable wealth in all senses of the word. Because there's evidence that proves the more money in the hands of more women does more good in the world. So women, when they have more money, they show up as bolder leaders, they make clearer decisions, and they do so in ways that benefit not just themselves, but the people and the planet around them. And I think that's pretty badass.
So rewinding, what would you say to your younger self?
You're a badass.
Yes.
I think I would, and I'm still working on that, by the way. I'm still somebody that has to put effort into believing that and to working on that self-worth piece. This is the money mindset work that I do is one element of how I access that side of myself. And it's an important way of accessing that for me. I think it's a really great route in because we all have a relationship with money. So it's very relatable for all of us to access that from the money point. But just in general, working on that self-belief is something, and working on my money mindset is something that I know I will be doing my whole life, because it's like any relationship. You can't just do something once and expect that that's going to have long-lasting change forever and ever and ever. All of our relationships, including the one we have with ourselves, takes nurturing and effort and attention. So I think I would go back to my younger self and give her that bit of advice, I think, just to invest that time in nurturing my self-belief, and to maybe not, and I find this bit quite hard, not to listen too much to the external noise and the external commentary and other people's shoulds and wants, and to try and get to that point of listening to myself a lot earlier in life and believing that my ideas are valid and credible and that they're valuable.
Is there anything else that you've not said that you really wanted to get across today? Anything about your work?
Yeah, I suppose the only thing that I was thinking about was when we were talking about the quiz and doing that first step into finding out your archetype. Finding out your money archetype and taking that assessment so you get that knowledge is the first step on the Money Quest, which is my signature program to help you rewrite your money stories and to reclaim your worth. And if anyone's interested in taking those steps, it can be quite confronting to do that alone. I know, because I've been in that position. So if you are looking for a guide and a fellow traveller to help you navigate that path towards wealth and worth, please do let me know, and I'd be absolutely delighted to get you onto the Money Quest.
Holly, thank you so much for joining today. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for challenging some of those stereotypes and bringing forward a conversation that for many I think is quite difficult, as you've explained. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Against the Tide, brought to you by Think for Wellbeing, the social change-making organisation. With thanks to Louise Kavanagh at Purposeful Marketing and the team at Sticks and Glass. Subscribe to Against the Tide wherever you get your podcasts so you will never miss an inspiring episode.